Hello and welcome to a Christmas special, I guess, where we're going to discuss the 1966 animated Grinch and the 2000 Jim Carrey How the Grinch Stole Christmas movie. Ugh. I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.
Alright, so we're going to start off with the 1966 Grinch animated special, which originally aired on CBS on December 18th, 1966. And yeah, this is quite fun. I enjoy this as much as I can enjoy a Christmas thing.
Yeah, it's so true. Just kind of the marvelous case of time that it came out, the popularity of itself through the time and just throughout the ages, and just how long it's still kind of sticks around in the public consciousness.
Yes. So the Grinch and the narrator are both Boris Karloff, which I do love because Boris Karloff is great. And for those of
Mm,
you who don't know, he played Frankenstein's monster in like a bunch of monster movies of the previous era.
mhm.
So the plot is very simple because it's a 25-minute special. The Grinch, he's the Grinch. He has a heart that's two sizes too small and he hates Christmas. He comes down from his cave on Mount Crumpet and steals Christmas from the Who's. But then the Who's are all like, you didn't steal Christmas. Christmas is not just about presents and trees and whatnot. And then he kind of brings everything back, and they're all like, "Hey, you can be our friend now."
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically the plot of this. It's not like a super complicated story, but it does
Mm.
have some very nice animation.
Yes, very much true. And again, the nice sort of thing of translating it from the book to an animation or special and whatnot that they did from there, especially from how things are kind of nowadays, it's pretty much can be done one to one to easily base everything on from the book onto the special. Since I suppose at the time it just worked fairly well enough for just doing it simply as it was. And whether it is the case of seeing either the special and or the book, it works out perfectly for its story since it's so simple and works with the base simple idea that Dr. Seuss sort of worked with.
Yeah, and the special is also written by Dr. Seuss,
Mhm.
which I think also helps. And like you said, like the book isn't super complicated either. It's very easy to turn the 64-page book into a 25-minute special because they don't
Mhm.
have to like come up with entire new plot lines that are terrible and stupid.
Yeah.
That might reveal some of my thoughts on the movie we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Oh. Okay. So, in terms of the success of this, well, it was pretty successful, for the time. It didn't
Mm,
get like super good reviews apparently at the time. It was like generally positive, but not like overwhelming. It was kind of
pretty
like,
much.
yeah, it's pretty good.
It's good to watch. There wasn't anything really bad to say out, but there weren't any super glowing reviews about it from the specific critics at the time.
No, and there were a couple of. I hesitate to call them sequels because they're not really sequels, but other specials that feature the Grinch. So,
Mm.
I don't know if you knew this, but there is a Halloween Grinch special.
No, I believe I vaguely remember the case with that, though it's probably been a good couple of years since I've actually seen it.
So it's from 1977, and it's called Halloween is Grinch Night.
Mm.
And I don't know how that works. And there's also another one called The Grinch. Grinch is the Cat in the Hat, which even more I have questions.
Yeah, I suppose, but I think it's also a bit of a case of with the success of the first Grinch special and whatnot from there, it's not too surprising that people sort of stepped in and had the thought of, hmm, we could possibly do a little bit more with this character, but also a case of the time when it was brought up from there. There might have been some weird stuff.
Fun fact: the Grinch's the Cat in the Hat was produced by Marvel.
On the one hand, that possibly doesn't surprise me, but on the other hand, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was while they were owned by New World Entertainment, and
Mm.
yeah, they produced a Grinch special. So that's kind of fun. The '60s Grinch, it's good. You should watch it. It's only 25 minutes, which is one of the reasons that it's good.
Yeah, nice and quick. Simply place it on, see it through from
Yes,
there.
yes, it's short. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It has some fun songs, and it has some very nice animation. And yes, it is. There's not a lot to say about it because it's very simple, but it's good that it doesn't overstay its welcome, unlike a certain
Mm.
movie that we're going to talk about.
Hmm.
Okay,
Now, again, I'm not sure if we've had discussions about this in the past, but I vaguely remember you saying that you somewhat have a soft spot for the How the Grinch Stole Christmas movie with Jim Carrey.
okay. Um, I have said this in the past. Part of that was because I hadn't watched it in a long time.
I see. So nostalgic memories, but kind of the case of it's been a while, so you don't see the horrible splotches on it.
Yeah, so I remember seeing this when I was so it came out when I was like 10, and I
Hmm.
probably saw it that Christmas or the next one, and then I watched it, and I don't think I've seen it for probably about 10 years.
Hmm.
And then I watched it today, and oh boy, I have some different thoughts on it.
Oh boy.
Okay, so the 2000 Jim Carrey film, directed by Ron Howard, is narrated by Anthony Hopkins and stars Jim Carrey as the Grinch. Jeffrey Tambor, who, yes, I love seeing Jeffrey Tambor. He plays the mayor of Whoville, and a couple other people who we'll get to later. What did you think of the film, Dave?
It's one of the particular things about this film, since again, I was same age as you around the time that it first sort of released. And seeing it from there, it was well enough for Grinch movie and whatnot from there. Fit the Christmas vibe, fit the typical special that was still kind of going on, but also kind of the case of building up from a film, going on from uh, additional things from that. Uh, and then having the film in my repertoire of things and having it as kind of a typical Christmas tradition of watching it, there's the little tinges and blips in my brain that are just like, oh my God, what the heck did they do to this? Why? Why? But then also the case of somewhat understanding why with going through thoughts of filming at the time, typical sort of thing. It's always going to be a marvelous case of someone reads a story, it's like, oh, I wants to do that one, and making a film for themselves. And then hearing stories, the behind the scenes sort of things of the work that was put into it, the stuff and thoughts that were done from the actors, the specificness of the scene. There's a warm fuzziness that kind of comes from the work of this sort of thing, but also just that 2000s cringe of just like, ooh, ooh.
Okay, so first couple of things I want to say about the film are the makeup on Jim Carrey is fantastic.
That is so very much true.
Fantastic makeup design,
Hmm.
which I think won an Academy Award, which it deserves because it is very, very good.
Hmm.
The production design is also very, very good.
Hmm. And again, going from the source material, there were pieces and little ideas that they could go with for the basis of everything. but also nice enough that they could come up with other particular ideas that they added on to within the film to give the world building to it a little bit more of an interesting flair and whatnot from the TV special.
Yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of they design a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily in the book or the original special, but it all feels like it works in like a Dr. Seuss movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nothing that stands out and I go like, oh, that was just a stupid 2000s idea. I'm like, no, this all like feels like it fits in this universe.
Mm-hmm. Though it kind of comes onto the decently large elephant that's sitting in the room of with this TV special being turned into a film, there usually either has to be a bit more of a thought that comes into the basis of the film, or the film has to supposedly have a bit more of a message than the TV special kind of went with, which at the time is understandable, but also kind of a case of it dates the movie and just it's still understand it, but just the cringe. Just
Okay, so let's go over the plot quickly because it is slightly different than the animated special because it's like 80 minutes longer.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we start with the Who's preparing for their Christmas, and we meet the Grinch, who lives in his cave in Mount Crumpet, although it is a much cooler design than the one in the animated cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
He plans to ruin Christmas. 6-year-old Cindy Lou Who is disillusioned with the town's obsession with the material aspects of Christmas, and we will talk about Cindy Lou Who later because
Mm,
that's an interesting story.
mm.
She encounters the Grinch at the Whoville post office, where he saves her after she falls into a mail sorting machine after he fucks around with the mail.
Mhm.
She's curious about his hatred for Christmas, and she learns more from the townspeople that he was abandoned by a baby and adopted, and yada yada yada. He had a crush on this girl in his class, and then he shaved and cut his face up, and then he made her this really terrible ornament and got laughed at.
Mhm.
So she decides that she wants to include the Grinch in Christmas festivities, and she nominates him to be the town's holiday cheermeister, much to the dismay of the mayor,
Mm.
who reluctantly agrees to have the Grinch attend, seeing an opportunity to confront his childhood tormentor. Basically, the Grinch participates in a bunch of events and starts to enjoy himself, but his mood changes when the mayor gives him an electric razor as a cruel reminder of his past. To further humiliate the Grinch, the mayor proposes to Martha, the Grinch's crush when he was a child, offering
Mm.
her a new car as an engagement present. The Grinch lashes out at the Who's, accusing them of valuing Christmas only for its materialism. He then shaves the mayor's head,
Yeah.
lights the town's Christmas tree on fire, and goes on a destructive rampage before returning to Mount Crumpet.
Mm.
He learns that the Who still plan to celebrate Christmas. He does the whole "I'm a steal Christmas" thing, dresses himself up as Santa, Max as a reindeer, and goes down to steal all the Christmas shit.
Mm.
And then from there, it's pretty much the same as the special. It's more or less like the first 60 minutes or so that's different. It's all like,
Mm.
hey, Christmas isn't really about the toys and the whatever, and they all come together, and the Grinch, his heart grows 3 sizes bigger, and he's happy and comes back and returns everything to the Who's.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Um. Uh, okay. I do not enjoy this movie.
Within the basis sense of its 2000 isms and or just kind of the basis of what they kind of went with the base idea instead of what they could have gone with instead.
I feel like it should never have been live action. As good as like the makeup is and the production design is, um, I don't like Jim Carrey.
Mm.
and that's hard for me to get over sometimes.
Mm.
And I just think the stuff they add on to the story, I'm like, I don't care. I don't need a backstory into why the Grinch hates Christmas. I don't need all of this. It just feels like it's tacked on, and I'm like, I don't care. Can we just
Mm.
get to the? I just want to see the Grinch steal Christmas, and then learn the true meaning of Christmas and return everything and be happy. That's what I came here for. I don't want this other 60 minutes or whatever before that of nonsense.
Hmm.
How about yourself, Dave?
And again, I can somewhat understand it, though it's kind of the basis of understanding the thought of they needed to add on the extra time from the half-hour special to make it into a movie. And again, just with how much they kind of had on hand, that they needed to add on, that they added on world building to the world of the Who's, basis of the Grinch's somewhat story of things. It's pretty much the double-edged sword that you need to deal with, especially within this sort of story. And I can understand people's concern or dislike of Jim Carrey with particular sorts of roles, but it's also just marvelous fun with the particular stuff that he supposedly improvised with uh, doing working with the movie, and just how much that they actually kept in to make it interesting or mildly funny just with the character that he portrayed the Grinch as. And despite the fact that we're not going to be able to talk about it, there's even more Grinch films out there, with the newest one that was released a couple of years back. Um, if I remember correctly, sometime around.
So there's a 2018 one called The Grinch that was done by Illumination,
Mhm.
who are the folks who did the what are they called?
The Despicable Me series that brought us all the minions.
Yes, those annoying little bastards.
Mm.
So they did one, and then there's one that you probably aren't familiar with. Did you know that the Grinch starred in a horror movie?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, but I think it's kind of a case of, was it one more supposed indie development sort of thing that they brought on, or just.
Yeah, of course it was. So there's been a trend in the last 5 years or so that as a lot of these characters have become public domain, they've made horror movies of them. So for those of you who don't know, there is a Winnie the Pooh horror movie.
Yeah, yeah. And they're working on getting a Mickey Mouse one altogether.
It might even be out already. But
Mm.
there's a Grinch one called The Mean One. And apparently it is not very good. Because none of them are actually good. They're just made because, like, this will sell to streaming and make money.
Yeah, yeah. But it still brings upon the idea of the Grinch base story and idea from the TV special is timeless. From when it was released up until now, you could watch it, see its story for how simple and basic it is, and it fills the basic Christmas niche, I believe, for the sort of idea they came up with it. But as time's kind of gone on, people have had other thoughts about it, wanted to try different ideas with it, and especially with the 2000s film and the 2018 film, there's different sorts of thoughts and ideas that they decide to go with, other people's different bins, which I can somewhat appreciate just with their artistic ideal and going with other sorts of things like that. But I can also find it a little bit exhausting. It's just like, why do you need to supposedly ruin a good thing by adding all this additional fluff onto it?
Yeah, I think I would be more willing to go with the new animated one than the live action one, just because I'm like, well, I feel like this story works better in animation than it does in live action. But I've also
Mm,
never seen that movie, so maybe it's terrible.
mm.
But yeah, I just feel like why make another one when the one in the '60s is so good? But the problem there becomes it does look like a cartoon made in 1966.
Yeah, and then I think as it sort of sits, it's one of the safest and easiest things that you can even show nowadays, since there isn't anything aside from its specific animation that would supposedly date it. It's so simplified with the basis of its message that there's not much that within it that could really either cause offense or be super outdated, I believe, with most anything, which I believe is just a hallmark of Dr. Seuss with the particular stories that he came up with around the time.
Okay, I completely agree with what you're saying, but I'm sure there are some people who probably have problems with the Grinch story.
Yeah, most likely there's going to be someone out there that's going to find a problem with something.
I guarantee you there is some, like, fucking libertarian asshole who's all like, why do they all have to work together and be a community? Everybody should just do their own thing. Because libertarians are like house cats. Anyway,
Mm,
moving on from my opinion on that. So I wanted to discuss quickly the actress who played Cindy Lou Who in the 2000s Grinch film. Don't worry, it's not a sad story.
mm,
I could tell people were probably worried. So, Taylor Momsen, who played Cindy Lou Who in this, she did have a couple of other acting roles. Um,
mm,
so she did this, and let's see, she did one movie prior to this, and then was in Spy Kids 2, and some Hansel and Gretel movie in 2002. What the fuck?
mm,
And was a regular or a main cast member of Gossip Girl for a couple of years.
mm,
However, she is probably more well known now for being the lead singer of a metal band.
mm.
What's the name of the band again? I had it here a second ago. Um, oh yeah, the Pretty Reckless. So yeah,
Mm,
that's what she's doing now, and I don't know, that's kind of cool.
mm.
So yeah, I thought I wanted to bring that up because I don't know how many people know that, and I haven't heard any of their music, but I will probably give it a listen. So yeah, what else did you want to talk about, Dave?
I think it's just the case that even despite the case with it going into live action, it's kind of one of the things of a bit of the time, and especially with a couple particular things nowadays, that it always tries to move something from an animated style into a realistic style. Either is just a one up of, oh, we could actually show the f- physical expression of live actors to do this sort of stuff with animated sort of stuff, which I can somewhat understand, but also on the other hand of just being like, why can't you just leave animated stuff alone? Why? But nevertheless, especially where the work that was done with Jim Carrey with his ideas, the comedy, and other ridiculous stuff that they came up with within it, it still hits that little bit of nostalgia within my own sort of thoughts on it, even despite the fact that, oh god, there's still all that cringe, all the cringe of just the 2000s and all the particular things about it. But what could you do? And honestly, as it could have stayed, it could have been far, far worse.
Oh, it could definitely have been worse. That's yeah, there's no doubting that. Also, if you haven't, you should go play the PS1 Grinch game because it's terrible.
Yeah, yeah. Just
But
like things at the time with animation being turned into live action movies, video games had to be based off of the movie I movie IPs, and they weren't exactly properly made.
no, it's a terrible game, but I have a soft spot for it because I played it as a kid. but oh, it's bad.
Mm.
Anyway, did you have any other thoughts, Dave? Which one did you prefer?
I don't think it's a case of preferring either one more so over the other, but still having the nostalgic of appreciating both of the bits of entertainment for what they are, and with in my own personal life, sort of hearing the stories of uh, hearing my nephews about watching the 2000 movie, as well as hearing about the shorts and other sorts of things from there. Only vaguely hearing about it, but maybe something to discuss with them over the holidays. But just the case of still something that exists that kids nowadays could still be exposed to in interesting sort of way, and just the variety of the stuff that's out there and just how it's kind of evolved and changed over time, but hasn't quite been morphed enough to completely destroy the message of what the basis had.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like you said, like you could still show the '60s one to pretty much anyone, and it's simple enough that anyone can kind of follow along and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely prefer the '60s one because
Mm.
I have problems with the live action one. But anyway, if there's nothing else, that was our little Christmas special. Maybe, unless we do another one. I don't know.
Depending on how timing and how things pan out within the next little bit before the year ends.
Yes, because I have some horrible ideas for another Christmas special. So if it happens, I'm sorry.
I somewhat accept your apology, but also know that it's not really an apology, so.
No, it's not. Anyway, until next time, I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.